MLP G5. Oh dear. G5 will probably go down in history as one of the worst generations ever in MLP, but not because of the story, the characters, or even the concept. Okay, maybe yes because of all of those things that I just named, but in my opinion what made G5 fail wasn't this, but rather the mismanagement by Hasbro. Hello everyone, my name is Sugarflake and today let's talk about 5 things that could have saved G5, or at least things that could have improved it at least a little bit. But today I'm not alone, because I'm joined by Sprout's #1 fan, the blue mare with pink hair, the one, the only, Bluebro!
Hey guys, it's me, the blue mare with the pink hair, and thank you Sugarflake for having me on.
I'm glad to have you here too, but now, let's begin. Let's begin with something that in my opinion could have been better, and that is the G5 toys. And no, I'm not talking about the quality of the toys because they're okay, but rather the missed potential of the characters that we got, because yes, really, something that everyone loved about G4 and other MLP generations was the pretty big variety of ponies that you could choose from. And in the case of G4, it didn't matter if it was a brushable, magazine figure, blank back figure, statue, or even plush. Even if it was a real obscure character that probably nobody knew except you, they at least had one piece of merch, official or not. And this is something that for some reason Hasbro didn't take advantage with G5, because sure, you may not like the show because it's boring, ugly or whatever, but at least if there was a character that was in the main 6 you could have them as a toy, right?
Thanks for the joke.
And while yes, they were some minor characters made into toys, Hasbro could have made not only more, but more fan favorites. And I'm not kidding, here's a list of the toys that Hasbro could have made. A special set with all the background ponies, a set with Alpha Beetle and his T-Bar, a set with Onyx and Bongo, a Pipsqueak set that included Violet, an Electric Blue set, a collection that included Spike and all the elemental dragons, a set or duo pack with Alorcons which included Violet Frost and Comet, or a set with Alora and his brother. And I could go on and on and on and on, but I think you get my point. And while this change wouldn't guarantee G5 success, it's a change that could have helped this generation, as is something that the MLP collectors in the community have been talking about back in 2023, and even nowadays. But this is all my opinion, but what do you think, Blue?
I think people forget that MLP is mainly a toy line, but the toys that are being produced now don't have the same quality or style as the older generations, which I think also has a lot to do with the lack of funds. Which also could be blamed on the newest Transformers movie, making more money than the G5 movie. And the Transformers toys are actually really great quality, and perform really well on sales. Maybe it's got some things to do with how kids have changed their taste in toys these days, and in the defense of Hasbro, I can't really blame them. I mean, come on. Everyone I know and all my friends watched the Transformers movie. You can't really ask anybody else if they've watched the G5 movie except for bronies. So, of course they would point money in that direction. I just really miss the box designs of the G3 toys, and even the boxes of the MLP G4 sets. It's just unfortunate, but it is what it is. Just wish more effort could have been put into the toys.
But the toys aren't the only aspect that G5 could have improved on, because we also have the tone and age range of the show. Now, yes, MLP will always be aimed towards kids, especially young kids, but this changed with G4. And this small change was something that tremendously helped G4, because now they could explore more diverse topics in the show. So you would think that Hasbro would leave this aspect going to G5, right? Yeah, for some reason Hasbro decided to lower the age range of the show from 9 to 12 to 4 to 6, which might not seem like a big deal, but it is, because now MLP, instead of focusing on interesting and relatable stories and messages, now focus more on the nonsensical and sometimes campy plots, which on its own is not bad. There have been NR shows which balance well these aspects, but the difference between these shows and G5 was that the campy and nonsensical moments and aspects was just to make you laugh,
やっと追いついた。
もう一人のライダーも来たー。あれ君は名乗りとかないの？
俺 あ、仮面ライダードライブ。
違う、さっきやってたようなやつ。
マッハ的な。
あ、あ。仮面ライダードライブ。
それだよ。
Or sometimes to move the plot forward.
Why didn't you tell me sooner?
I thought it'd be a fun surprise. Are you mad?
Yes, I'm mad, but that is not the biggest problem we have right now. Remember, I don't have a bay anymore.
I forgot!
What do we do? A guy without a bay can't become a pro later?
Yeah, you're
I
right!
have to forfeit. There's no other way. Ah! It was the perfect chance.
Need some help?
Huh?
I've got a bay. Want to use it?
For real? Hang on. I can't accept that. I don't know you.
Hey, now, let's not be hasty.
Seriously, don't worry about it. You see? I have more bays here than I know what to do with.
G5 didn't do that, and rather they wanted the whole episode to be campy and silly, and if it was only in Tell Your Tale, I wouldn't mind because of the short 5-minute format, I get it. My problem is in Make Your Mark, because despite being the main show, the show felt like they were going through the motions and also felt that the stories were really rushed. Or, in the other hand, they amounted to literally nothing. And if I'm honest, I think I would have preferred the show to do what Pony Life did, which was in one episode be silly and wacky, and then in the next one continue the main story. Or do what Kamen Rider Drive did, which, despite being a show with moments like this,
そもそもさ、なんで街で暴れてあの女の子を狙ったの？
君には分かりっこないよ。
なんで？
あんまアニメとか見ないでしょ。車マニアだし。
お前、どうかしまったのかよ。どこか変かな、俺。
変ではないけど、変じゃないから
なんか無理してないか、テス。別に無理なんてしてないさ。俺はね、人間になれたんだよ。はあ ？What？
Despite all of that, it still gives us a surprisingly good story, and what makes this show pretty unique is that the early development of our characters came from the silly and nonsensical moments, which is pretty cool if you think about it, and in consequence, despite the show being extremely silly to the point that sometimes you can't take it seriously, it still can have some serious and satisfying moments, like for example when Shinosuke reveals his identity as Kamen Rider Drive, which despite Cream's warnings he transforms to save the life of his friend, despite the fact that this could affect his career as a detective and even get him arrested, but is in this moment where Shinosuke goes from a lazy, cowardly and irresponsible detective to a true hero. But maybe that's just me. But what do you think, Blue?
So first, I want to say that originally I didn't like G5 at all. Not a single bit. But after hearing what people have to say and looking at some of the comics that were recommended by Sugarflake, I think I have some better opinions now. To be fair, I really do love the movie like I've said before, but I've actually begun to appreciate the 3D show. I think the G5 2D show is still garbage, don't get me wrong, but the show is actually pretty impressive. The animation for the 3D show is provided by Atomic Cartoons and produced by Cecile Kramer and Peter Lewis, along with some other producers. And let me say, the sound design, and there's not many songs, but the songs that are there are actually not that bad. With the music being provided by Alex Schmicker, so sorry if I mispronounced that, and Michael Mahler, with only 3 music producers, they do a lot with the resources they are given. Not as amazing as the G4 show, but with only 1 season, the sound production is pretty solid. My main gripes are the animation. It can be very sloppy and at many times very stiff, mostly because of the amount of workload the animation studio had. And also Hasbro spending most funds to the 3D show to the 2D show. It is kind of unfortunate, and the lip syncing isn't always perfect. The animation seems like it's from an indie animator, even though there are more than just one animator. But I actually really like how the models look, though my main issue is their colors, especially Sprout's. they just don't look as expressive and colorful as the G5 movie counterpart. But obviously, that's because of the lack of funds.
And okay, the tone of the show is more silly now, sure, and some people may say that that's not a big deal, but the next aspect is. This is a point that I've talked about in the past, and I still stand by it, but let's hear what Blue has to say first.
Now, in terms of how the personalities are, I feel like the biggest problem is Sunny Starscout's personality. Having it basically be just like Twilight Sparkles and having no differentiation except there's now racism between ponies and Sunny Starscout needs to connect everybody. I feel like she should have taken some elements from Hitch. You know, kind of been like a bit afraid and worried about connecting all the pony races. And I feel like Izzy Moonbow should have been the one to come out of nowhere and kind of inspire Sunny Starscout to pursue connecting the pony races. I also feel like Hitch as a character is kind of so unimportant to the story. I understand that he's the one that's trying to hold back Sunny Starscout because he's trying to keep her safe. However, I feel like he just gets in the way of things, and having him removed from the story probably would have been for the best. Now, keeping Sprout in, I think, was important. Sprout, in my opinion, is one of the coolest antagonists we've ever seen in My Little Pony. And I feel for the most part, Hitch is just kind of there, in the way of everything, just a bystander. And yes, he does change his opinion about the other pony races towards the end of the movie, but that's kind of it. We don't really get a sit down with Hitch, we don't really get to understand how he's feeling, and that makes him unimportant to me. That makes him almost feel like he shouldn't be there. Pip, and don't get me wrong, I know a lot of people like Pip, but Pip also feels kind of unimportant as well. I mean, to me in the story, she's just Zip's annoying, petty sister. I don't feel like she really gives anything to the story. I feel like they could have just had her as kind of like a character that was there and then just have Zip be a part of the main cast of characters. Now don't get me wrong, I think Pip is really supposed to kind of connect with the newer generation and supposed to be relatable, which I do agree, she is kind of relatable, but that's not really what I care about in a story, especially a story about racism and trying to connect everybody with peace. The only character I really think fits their personality was Zip. I mean, she was just Rainbow Dash. She's the perfect character for a Rainbow Dash personality. There's nothing I would really change about her. Now, what I will say is, Sprout's mom should have got more attention.
Thank you, Blue. Now, the personalities of the main 5 in G5 were okay, but if I'm honest, they were quite generic. Sunny was the optimistic leader, Izzy was the random and weird pony of the group, Pip was the influencer, Hitch was the comedic relief character, and Zip, which in my opinion is the best out of the main 5 personality-wise, she was just the rebellious princess that preferred to have fun instead of her responsibilities. And while these are fine, these were shadows of what their personalities could have been. Let's go to the G5 comics, where ironically the writers actually gave the main 5 a bunch of new personalities, stories, and even arcs to complement them. For example, Sunny, instead of being the perfect and boring protagonist, she was toned down, making her a logical, short-fused, and at times skeptical pony. Like when she doubts the existence of the trench ponies, or that time where she lashes out at Daisy because she changed her smoothie recipes. And even intimidating Pip because she made her walk in the desert for hours when she could have just, you know, called for help. And while this might seem like a downgrade from Sunny in the shows, she really isn't, because Sunny in the comics is a character that needs to learn how to get along with her new friends. And despite sometimes lashing out at them or hurting them unintentionally, at the end of the day she does care about them and always makes things right at the end. Or how about Izzy? While in the shows is a Pinkie Pie clone, the comics made Izzy into a nerdy, charismatic, and at times unhinged pony, but that always stays by her friend's side and supports them, even if it means her getting traumatized, questioning her friends, or even feeling left out. Or what about Hitch? Yes, Hitch is still somewhat of a comedic relief character, but that's not his character, and often he serves to be the voice of reason, and even having a small arc to not let others walk over him, and even improving his role as a sheriff, with him actually going out of his way to solve some mysteries and mentoring Zip to be a better detective, something that we really didn't see much in the show. Or how about Zip, where in the comics we learned that she's a Wonderbolts mega fan and wanted to learn more about their history and what happened to them. Or the reason why she doesn't want to be a princess, which is not because she doesn't want to, but because she doesn't want to disappoint anyone, and feeling like if she does, others might see her as less of a pony. Or what about Pip, where Pip had a bunch of stories exploring different aspects of her and not only being the caricature of an influencer. Like for example, exploring her rivalry and struggles with other influencers. Pip's struggles and jealousy towards Zip for not appreciating her position as a royal figure, or Pip seeking to be more than an influencer and wanting to become a role model for her followers, which sparks an arc about her changing her content and the toll this has on her. Messages and aspects which were great because it made our characters more fleshed out and relatable to the stories they had, but more importantly, to us. But sadly, there's another aspect which G5 had to deal with, which was... Yep, the G4 connection. This is something that a lot of people had debated over the years, but to me it wasn't about the G4 connection, but rather what they didn't do with it. Because yeah, every time that I was watching G5, I sometimes forgot that G5 and G4 were in the same universe. So leaning more to G4 could have saved G5, well, yes and no. Yes, because if you're going to make it in the same universe, you have a great opportunity to explore new or revamped concepts from G4 and maybe even improve on them. But no, because if you over-rely on G4, then you can't explore new things in G5, like world, characters, and even new lore. What I'm trying to say is that G5 needed to find a balance between the old and the new, while also improving the already established world. And it might seem impossible, but again, there's been other shows that made it work, because it wasn't about revisiting old G4 locations or referencing characters, but rather evolving what already was introduced in G4, starting with the world. The world in G5 felt empty, and something that could have improved it was to add drop balls or all artifacts or vehicles of what it once was. Something like what we saw with Canterlot in the comics or Easy Scooter in the show. Or, why not, reintroduce fan-favorite species to the world of G5 with new concepts. Like the Umbram, but instead of making them just a species or a set of characters, why not say that the Umbram were used by the unicorns in the Dark Ages as allies to have an upper hand against the other pony races. And instead of the Umbram controlling the pony, rather the Umbram and the pony are one in the same. This could open a new set of stories to explore, but also painting the Umbram in a different light than how we saw them in G4. Or how about reintroducing our fan-favorite species to locations we already have in G5, like griffins being allies and living alongside Pegasi in Zephyr Heights, making them the upper class, which would be a nice contrast to what we saw in G4. Or how about the Kirin and Deer, which they could have lived alongside the unicorns in Briarwood, but we discovered that the three species have been having problems for centuries, with the main five trying to find a way to reunite everyone, while also having an arc with Izzy. Or how about mixing old species from G4 with new concepts, like for example making an underground town where crystal ponies live alongside a species of rock ponies. I mean, there's a lot of cool and intriguing concepts that you can make mixing these two generations, but there's one more point that could have saved G5, and to me this one is the most realistic one. This one is... It's no surprise that this one is number 1, but I can hear some people telling me,
"Oh, this is not true, G5 was doomed to fail either way."
But think about it, a lot of the dislike for G5 comes from the connection and over-reliance on G4, so it only makes sense to make G5 its own separate universe. But I know what you're probably saying, how would this world work without the G4 connection? What incentive is there to reunite the pony races, or to even care about the crystals? Well, that's actually pretty simple. The story of this G5 would be about the struggles of a normal world going magical and mystical, where we see a world that seems normal at first. There's no magic and the only pony race is the Earth Pony, but this all changes when a young unicorn goes to Maritime Bay, and the life of a bright-minded Earth Pony gets flipped upside down. And from there we could explore why the magic suddenly disappeared, why the other pony races forgot about each other, and even answering some questions like how would magic affect the day-to-day life of every pony. Or how established things like transportation might change because of magic, like for example, do you walk or take the train to go somewhere, or do you train your magic to use a teleportation spell to go there? And we could also see things like magical creatures or anomalies being more prominent in this world, leaving ponies to figure out how to deal with these creatures. And this could also go to our main 5, like Sunny learning the meaning of being an alicorn and seeing the struggle she faces for being different from everyone else. Or the chaotic consequences of mishandling other types of magic, like weather or even more darker styles of magic. Which leads me to Misty and Opaline, where we could see them not only terrorizing this new Equestria with dark magic and even unleashing dangerous creatures upon Maritime Bay, like brainwashed dragons and bringing a lore into this world to destroy it. Or Misty's reformation about leaving your past behind and looking forward into a better future, seeing how others look at her for being someone who used to help Opaline, and with even the main 5 not trusting her. Kinda like what we saw with Sunset Shimmer in Equestria Girls. Or make Sprout a part of the main group. I mean, there's a lot that you could do with what already was established in G5, and in a way it makes you realize how shallow the G4 aspect really was, and in my opinion, this is something that truly could have saved G5. But anything that you want to add, Blue?
After watching the movie again, I still really love it, even more now. It's still amazing, and I don't have much gripes with it except for the fact that I don't really understand how Sunny deserves her powers. The characters aren't that unique, and the story gets quite repetitive with its themes. But other than that, the animation is still amazing and the music is a banger as well. At the end of the day, I am sad that G5 is basically finished. I feel like it had a lot of potential, but that's why we should look to the future and pray that the Hasbro gods will bless us once again. But anyway, it's been your host, Bluebro, and thanks again to Sugarflake for having me on. Back to you.
Thank you, Blue, and yes, I do agree with you. But now that we are at the end of the video, I just want to say some honest words about G5. G5 is gone, and there's not going back from that, and I know that. But believe it or not, I don't hate G5. There's some aspects that I actually adore, like for example, Tell Your Tale, a show that was silly, wacky, and at times funny, and in a way it made me remember how early G4 seasons were, because it wasn't about the villains or the lore, but rather about the slice of life comedy. And that's without mentioning that the Japanese dub is one of the best ones that we ever had in the franchise, even better than the G4 dub, which is just crazy to say. And of course the comics, which in my opinion is how G5 should have been, either in lore, characterization, or just in the fun adventures that we got to see. And as a whole, G5 was that, fun, and for that I need to say thanks G5, you weren't the best, but you were okay. But what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on G5, good and bad, and what things you would have done to improve it? Leave it down in the comments. And a huge thanks to Bluebro for being here, and let me just take this time to say, if you don't know who Blue is, he's an MLP YouTuber that makes commentary videos, animations, and even music. And also he's a friend of mine, so if you like my content, I think you will like his content too, so go check him out. I'll leave his channel in the description of the video. And let's get him to 2000 subscribers because he really deserves it. And remember to like the video if you enjoyed it and consider subscribing for more MLP videos like this one, and remember, it's not goodbye, it's see you later.